Diana, I got your number from your resume on LinkedIn. My name is Sarah, and I'm an old student of. And like you, we had a relationship. I don't know the circumstances of your relationship with him, but it concerns me to see his behavior continue long after I knew him. I'm curious if you would be willing to talk to me about your experience. If not, I respect that.
Sarah, I am at a loss of words, but also have so much to say. Yes, I would love to talk to you about this. Were you a student in Iowa? This is Diana.
This is Sarah.
And this is Blooming After Grooming, our podcast. And thank you so much for coming back, for checking out our intro episode. And if you haven't done that yet, it is recommended because we do talk a little bit more about what we're doing, why we're doing it, a little bit about who we are. And today's episode, our first episode, is going to be a little bit more about Sarah. How are you feeling about that, Sarah?
I'm looking forward to talking and, maybe learning something new about each other today. Because, seems like we always find out something silly about each other when we talk about who we were back in the day, back in high school.
Yeah, we've known each other now for a few years, and I know we've both talked about like our experiences, but we do every time I learn something a little new about you. Yeah, I do feel that it is important to share just a little more information about who we are. I think being a little more open and sharing about who we were, what was going on when the abuse kind of started or the grooming started, or the origin story of all of it, is helpful.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also important to consider, who you were before these experiences, as so much of the conversation is about who you are afterwards. So I think it's always kind of nice to bookend it a little bit by also talking about kind of who you were before, not just your identity post-abuse.
Yeah, that is such a good point. It's like you read my mind and you make sense of all the thoughts that are up here, and then you are able to articulate it in such a beautiful way. Yes, exactly.
It's a good team.
Okay. So how old were you when you first met the teacher?
I would have been 15 years old, I do believe, because he came to my town when I was a freshman, I want to say. Yeah, a freshman in high school. So I had him as a teacher for my entire high school career. Our school was really small. It was kindergarten through 12th grade in one building, which is crazy to a lot of people. And, in 5th grade, you got to go upstairs to the second story of the building. And that was like the big exciting moment of your education.
That's wild.
Yeah. So we only had one English teacher for high school and one math teacher for high school. So I think it's important to point out because a lot of people don't grow up in a town that small. And so their idea of access to students and access to teachers can be very different. It's a very small rural school. So you'd have one math teacher, but that teacher would also be in charge of, whatever, 4-H, or the English teacher would be in charge of the yearbook and the newspaper and was involved in the plays and yada, yada, yada. Right. So you had a hell of a lot of exposure to one or two teachers, depending on the interests that you were involved in. Same with sports, right? Classic health teacher was also the gym teacher who was also the basketball coach, kind of a thing. I mean, our class was only 35 kids, like our graduating class, the whole grade.
Oh my gosh. That's less than some classrooms nowadays. That's so, wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you said it's
small.
it was very rural. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my hometown was like 1,200 people as the whole population, I think, at the time.
You said you were 15. So what year would that have been?
I graduated in 2004. So it would have been like 2000 going into 2001.
The millennium. Y2K.
Yes, that's right. Everyone thought the world was going to end.
Yeah.
Dancing to NSYNC videos, drinking sparkling grape juice. It was a time to be alive. Yeah. So I was super young when the first time I met him, for sure.
Apart from like Y2K, and the millennium, like what else was going on at that time? Like what was happening in your life?
Um, I had a high school boyfriend. We were very dramatic. We were very on and off again, breaking up one week, getting back together dramatically the next week. I wish I had kept track of how many times we broke up. It's probably an embarrassing high number. First love, the sky is falling if, things aren't working out. And then it's, earth-shatteringly fantastic when you're back together. So, that was the majority of what was happening in my life because I was 15 and, I was boy crazy, so that was kind of my main focus. And my friends, I wasn't really into sports. I'm still not into sports. I do not sports ball. I do not sports talk unless you're talking about Taylor Swift's boyfriend. That's the only thing I care about. Um, yeah, so I was an art kid. I was an art club with like two other friends of mine. The art club was like three kids. Yeah, that was kind of my main involvement in school at the time. Uh, I'm dyslexic and have ADHD, so growing up, school was not a place I enjoyed being and was not a place that I found comfort or joy for the most part. Most of my experiences with teachers up until that point had been, not the best. I had some good teachers along the way. I don't want to paint them like they all were subpar, but special education and the understanding of learning disabilities in a small rural town in Iowa in the early 90s, shocker, was pretty fucking bad. And there was just a lot of she's lazy, she's not trying hard enough, she's not applying herself. So I think that kind of paints a big part of it for me, like eventually when it got into the point of meeting the teacher and the way that he treated me, I think that's my learning disability, I think played a really big part in that because he was giving me praise and attention I had never received from a teacher. Like I had not had that experience before. And I think that partially,
Hmm.
he used it against me.
Thanks for talking a little bit about being dyslexic and having ADHD because yeah, the late 90s, early 2000s, I remember like and it's still a problem, but like just it was in the popular culture, like making jokes about that was still a thing and like people were still like saying the R word and
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about how early on when AOL, America Online, was a thing, an email was becoming, a thing. Like I had an email address on like the 4th grade. So that was like what, 1999, I think. And there were these like evites, like or
Mm-hmm.
e-greetings, like
Mm.
e-cards or something. And there was one that was like for Superstar, the Molly Shannon and Will
Yeah.
Ferrell movie. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like, here's and it was like the priest from the movie, and he was saying something. The card said something like, "You're so special. You belong in special ed." And it was like a cutesy like joke card. And I was thinking
Yeah.
about that today of like, wow, like that was a thing. Like that was like okay. And that's like I was 9 years old seeing that, being influenced by that. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just time and a place for sure. It's just
Well,
yeah,
people
interesting
still
times.
say, I still hear people say all the time, like, oh, like I'm having a dyslexic moment, like when they say something backwards or they say something incorrectly or they spell something wrong, which I'm always just like, it's not a moment. Like it's a legitimate learning disability. Like it always kind of pisses me off when people just say that. Like, and I don't think people mean it to be jerks. It's just one of those things that people just, I think, get in the habit of saying and don't get out of the habit of saying. And ironically, the teacher actually sent me one of those e-cards, not that specific one, but that just jogged a memory of back in high school. I remember him sending me like romantic e-cards that had like, they had those cheesy old animations and it would have like songs
Yeah.
on it. Yeah, he sent me a few of those back in the
Eh,
day. Probably through AOL Messenger, honestly, because we also messaged on AOL back in the day.
still surprises me like how talking about something e-cards would jog a memory, this how sometimes talking about the thing helps memories come to surface.
Yeah,
That's
it's
so
funny the things you
interesting.
kind of don't remember until somebody yeah, says something. I had that happen a lot during the investigation. There would be,
Mm.
talking to other classmates, they would say something and I'd be like, "Oh my god, I completely forgot about this pretty significant thing." And like once it's jogged, it like all comes flooding back and you're like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
trauma, baby. you know? Your brain filters things out so that you can function and go to work.
So that you you can get out of bed every day. Okay,
Exactly.
so it is 2000, you have a dramatic relationship, but, living your teenage life.
And an age appropriate relationship, let's be clear, like another teenage boy.
Yes.
Like
Yeah, yeah,
who
yeah.
I am in
You're
school with at the time. Yes.
yeah, a normal, like, coming of age,
Mhm.
getting to know you in relationship and what relationships are. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so when you met the teacher, how did he come into your
I
life?
think I was at the school early trying to meet the new art teacher because I was an art nerd and I really wanted to meet her. We had had the same art teacher for years at my school who I adored. And he retired and they had brought in someone new. And so I was there like the day before school started or a couple days before school started. They must have had some kind of open house thing or something. And I went to just go talk to the art teacher. And I remember him coming in to the art class room and just kind of introducing himself to her, the other teacher, and then me because I just happened to be standing there. And I think there was a couple other students in the room at the time. And I mean, I was just like, whatever. Here's this nerdy dude, and his white button down and his tie. Like, I don't know, didn't think much of it. Um, yeah, it didn't really stand out to me, I guess. I was super excited about the new art teacher, and I thought she was the coolest, so I was very distracted by her. Um, we had a lot of turnover that year at our school. A lot of older teachers had retired, and a lot of new young ones came in, so he was in a batch of, like, a lot of new teachers that were in their 20s. But yeah, I don't really remember meeting him the first time as being a super memorable experience. I do know that the first year I had him, I hated him and I thought he was a pretentious asshole. And I was right. And I should have trusted my instincts on that.
Uh,
That's something I've talked to my therapist a lot over time of like, there have been a few people in my life that the first time I met them, I really strongly disliked them. And then I eventually let them into my life. And then years later, to find out I was right the first time, right? That like my instincts were correct. And that really messes with you because it makes you feel like you can't trust
mhm.
your instincts and it makes you feel like you're stupid or something. And it's taken a lot of time to kind of learn that that's what manipulating gaslight people do though, right? Is they trick you into not trusting your instincts and they trick you into trusting them. And so my suggestion is trust your instincts. And if you meet somebody and they seem like a creeper, they probably are. So I'm not
Trust
a
that gut.
yeah, I am a big fan of trust your gut. And so yeah,
Yeah, there's
did not
something
like
for
him.
sure. There's something to be said about, like, intuition and instinct. Like,
Hmm.
that is as old as we are, and it's,
Yeah.
something to pay attention to. You having that, like, initial reaction of, like, this pretentious jerk, anyone who is listening to this who knows who we are talking about, like, there's so many people. How many times have we heard that? How
Yeah.
many times have we heard, like, "Oh, he was so annoying," or, "Oh, everyone said, like, don't take his class because he sucks."
I mean, yeah, looking back at him now as an almost 39-year-old woman, it's laughable the behavior that he was pulling in class. I mean, it was just not laughable. It's actually really upsetting, but like just so childish and selfish
Yeah.
and
And
egotistical. It's just
needy.
so needy. My God. Did he ever? It's fine. Yeah, the point of this podcast is to not just shit talk one guy, but it is hard not to.
I
Yes.
mean, it's our
So
podcast, and we can
it's
shit
true.
talk this particular
It's
shit
true.
guy.
It's true. Did he ever used to talk about how in your guys' classes well, probably not because he would have aged out. When I had him as a teacher, he was convinced that he was going to die at the age of, what is the age that all those people died at,
33
26?
oh,
No,
27.
27.
27.
He was
Yeah, yeah.
convinced he was going to die at 27, just like Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin. And I remember being like 16 and being like, in what world do you think that you are even in the same fucking category as these people? Like, what are you talking about? Like, and he would get like so dramatic about it and like talk about it all the time. It was so weird.
He
And like,
wanted to
how
be like
pretentious is that? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's such a
Dude
weird
wanted to
guy.
be like a tragic hero,
Well, he's
he
tragic.
wanted he
He got
is, but
half of
not
that
like
down. Anyways, so that also just came back to my mind. Also, I remember him making jokes about making action figures about celebrities' deaths, and I remember that being really weird. Like, he joked about making a Jimi Hendrix action figure with, like, opposable vomit and, like, a Kurt Cobain
oh,
one that came with a shotgun. Like, he talked about that in class.
that is wildly inappropriate
Isn't that nuts? In
and
retrospect,
just
it's
like weird.
I haven't thought about that in so long. Like, wow, yeah, he said some really weird shit.
What?
Or when he would joke about grabbing a baby in their soft spot. Did you ever make that joke with you guys? Dude, there is some
He
stuff flooding
stopped.
back right now that I'm like, holy shit. Like, this guy should have
He
been fired.
Yes, yes. I and
Mm,
yeah, like he would talk it's sad. Like he would see the students as like his friends or like
yeah.
his future friends
Hmm.
and would introduce them to the things that he liked so that they would also like it and they could talk about
Hmm.
it later when it's fucking pathetic. But no, I do remember he joked about like punching babies and he called like those big white vans. He would call them child molester vans. And
Oh, the irony of it all.
yeah. So on that note,
Anyway, sorry, I really sidetracked us
no, I love it. I'm always down for a dump on
there.
that shit guy. Um, but yes, on that note, like when did you start to feel or when did you start to take notice or realize that what was happening between the two of you was going beyond a normal teacher student relationship?
For me, honestly, it wasn't until my senior year of high school, and I think the fact that I was so, uh, dramatically enthralled with my high school boyfriend is probably the only reason that that held off until my senior year of high school, um, because in retrospect, the whole time, I was taking his creative writing classes, and I was in journalism, and I was in yearbook, and I was in newspaper, and he would come to my parent-teacher, one-on-ones for kids in special education, and talk about how great I was doing. Like, he was like very, very involved in my high school education, um, which should be a really nice story about a teacher who believed in a kid who had dyslexia and helped her believe in herself and helped her like find her voice. And then it turned out that he did it all just to sexually abuse me. So it's not a good story and it's a really big bummer. Um, but yeah, I really think I owe him abusing me, being put off until I was a senior, to the fact that I was, like, absolutely sun and moon obsessed with my high school boyfriend. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we were just so dramatic. Anyways, so it was my senior year of high school, and, my high school boyfriend and I had just broken. It was even before we broke up, because I remember at one point him asking me, my high school boyfriend asking me if I had a crush on the teacher, and I remember saying, "What? No, you're crazy," and in the back of my head thinking, "Oh god, do I
Mm.
have a crush on him?" Like, ew, because he's not cute. My high school boyfriend was a good-looking guy. Anyways, and then it was so I kind of had a feeling that maybe I had a crush on him before I had broken up with my high school boyfriend, and then we broke up for the final high school time. Yeah, and I remember it was Ryan Adams' album, Rock and Roll, had come out, and the teacher had announced in class that he was gonna drive into town, to go get the CD after school, and did anybody wanna come with him? Which, like, full stop right there is fucking crazy. Like, he invited a classroom full of kids to drive 30 minutes to the next town over to go buy CDs with him. This is not like day of,
That's
like,
not okay.
no, like, that's
That's not
crazy. Like, you
okay.
don't just take kids to a different town as a teacher with as any adult without their parents' consent, like, it's nuts. And so I was like, "Yeah, I'll go with you." I wanted the CD because, like you said, he had spent, like, years introducing me to all these bands and movies and books that he liked, and you're right, like, he essentially was grooming, like, the whole class to be his buddies because he was a loser that didn't have any friends, and so he had to make friends out of children. Um, so I was excited about the CD, and I think it was, like, in front of the whole class. I was like, "Yeah, I'll go with you," and nobody else wanted to go. So it didn't seem weird because I was like, "Well, everybody knows I'm going with him, so it's not
Mhm.
like it was secret or something." Um, but then I remember getting in his car in the parking lot after school and thinking like, "This is kinda weird." Like, it's just
It's
me
just
and
me and this
just
teacher.
me and this teacher, and you're, like, in someone's car and it smells like their cologne and, like, you're seeing like, people's cars are an intimate space, like, you're seeing their
Yeah. I would
mail and
say,
you're
like, most
seeing
students don't see the inside of their teachers' cars. Like,
not by sitting in
it's
them, no, like, maybe even looking at them. Yeah, it was just very strange, and I will say, when we made our police reports and stuff, like, that detail was, like, a big deal to a lot of the different people that I talked to. They were like, "I'm sorry, you were in his car?" And he drove you
mm.
somewhere else off of school property. And I remember being like, "That's the part we're gonna get okay." Like, I feel like you and I had so many times like, "This is the thing you're gonna get upset about,
Yeah.
not the part where, he's making out with his 17-year-old student. That's not the part we're gonna get upset about." Me riding in his car apparently is a big no-no.
But
Um
it is really it it is interesting him taking a notice and wanting to support your education
Mhm.
and building up your confidence through dyslexia, where even, like, sharing music interests or whatever. There's a line for sure. Like, I don't think he should be like, "Hey, I'm gonna go get the CD. Who wants to come with me?" But, like, where is that line of an adult being authentic, but still professional? And these kinds of predators are so hard to identify because they are so good at, like, riding that line between, "Oh,
Sure.
I'm just, like, a caring, invested teacher," and,
Which
"No,
is
I
which
have
is
ulterior motives, and I'm a pervert."
yeah, and that's the bummer part of it is that I think, you and I will say this many times, I'm sure, but, like, we love teachers. I have a sibling
Yes.
who's a teacher. I have a lot of friends that are teachers. This is not an anti-teacher podcast. And yeah, you need to be honest. You need to share who you are with your students because I do think having that human connection is important. Like, I have friends that are teachers that like their students know what musicians they like, right? But he did it in a way that was very much I'm cool. And if you want to be cool, you need to like what I like. And if you don't like what I like, I'm going to literally berate you in class in front of the other kids, which he did. He was so mean. Like, in retrospect, it's so clear that he was bullied growing up and he was not the cool kid growing up because he was so mean to the jocks in our class. Literally talked to them like they were idiots in front of everybody and would just like berate them and then really put a lot of attention on kids like me who were the fringy outsider artsy kids, right? Because that's what he identified with. But also those are the kids that are hell of a easier to go after because the town's
Yeah.
not paying attention. No one's paying attention to the weird girl with the divorced parents who's in the art club and is in no sports, it is in no extracurricular activities at the school. No one's paying attention to her. It's just like a perfect storm of just like his neuroses and being able to spot kids that were kind of on the fringe a little bit and kind of just using that against everybody. But yeah, like I don't want to make it sound like, oh, if you're a teacher and you tell your students what band you like, that means you're a pervert. Like that's definitely not the truth.
Yeah. Well,
But
that's not all he did.
no, 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 no. But yeah, he also would just berate kids for like liking things he didn't like. Anyways, we went into town, bought the CDs, and then we were driving back to my hometown. And he was playing that Ryan Adams cover of Desire, which again is so inappropriate to be playing in a car alone with your student. And I just remember he started asking questions about who I was dating and who my boyfriend was and if we were still dating. And that he heard that I was dating so and so. And I was like, no, I'm not dating that guy. Boop, boop, boop. And I remember thinking, like, this is a really weird conversation to be having with my teacher alone in his car while listening to the song Desire. And I remember thinking, does this mean he likes me? You know? And there was that mix of like, this is exciting and this is kind of scary. And am I just reading into this or is this normal? Or does this mean he has a crush on me? You know, because I was like freaking 17 years old. So
Mhm.
that was a very distinct moment though, where I was like, okay, this repertoire between us is changing. Like there's something shifting here. I don't know what it's shifting into, but this is not the relationship we had a year ago or a month ago.
And the relationship that you did have like a year ago, because you said this was senior year, but you met him freshman year.
Mhm.
Um, what were some of the things that he was doing to try to get close to you or to what was grooming you, I guess? Like what were
Yeah.
some of those things that were that was happening?
Yeah, I mean, so I took his creative writing class, which included like you had to do writing journals every week and then you turn it over to him. So, you know, in retrospect, looking back at it, it's like, okay, so he had access to your journal for 4 years where he was giving you assignments about write a story about, you know, your worst memory from your childhood or write a story about like what you're most afraid of. Good lord, like, if you wanna go and groom somebody, they just handed you everything you need to
Mhm.
know. Like, he had a playbook of every kid in those classes of how to manipulate them to get whatever he wanted from them. Because if he knew that you're most insecure about your body image or something, he could make comments, positive or negative, that would totally impact the way that you engaged with him. Or if your fear was failing at school, like, he could fucking fail you, right? Or he could give you good grades so that you like look up to him. Like it's so much control. And again, these are things that are okay in the hands of the right people. I do think some of the assignments were pretty inappropriate. You know what I mean? Like some of the questions were, I think, overly personal because we also then had to like share a lot of the writings in class, which I do remember leading to like some pretty intense moments in class where people were like crying and like upset because they were sharing really intense stuff. And it's a room full of teenagers in the freaking early 2000s. Let me tell you, not an emotionally like woke group of people that are going to hold space for you, right?
No.
No, like, you're just a teacher's making you get up and tell a super embarrassing story in front of a bunch of classmates, and then some douchebag kid in your class is just going to make fun of you about it forever. But then that would give the teacher the opportunity to save you, right? And defend your honor. It's so fucked up in retrospect.
Just create a problem to then be the solution.
Exactly. Well, he also had this whole Dead Poets Society obsession where I really think he thought that he was Robin Williams and it was so gross, dude. Like he wanted our classes to be these like dramatic, meaningful things and he wanted to be the one person that changed all of our lives. Like it was all just ego, his ego. That's
Mhm.
all it was the whole
Ugh.
time. So that was a big part of it. And sadly, he really did help me come out of my shell about, you know, writing. And I never in a million years would have signed up for the newspaper and the yearbook and all these things that I did. And I ended up doing it because he was like, no, you can do this. And I believe in you. And it sucks because he really did make a big difference in my comfort with myself as a writer and a speaker. And it's such a hard thing to hold space for at the same time because, you know, I strongly dislike him. I have so
That's
much
putting it
rage.
lightly.
That's putting it very lightly. I have a lot of rage towards him because he literally stole the last year of my high school and the first year of my college experience and abused me. I mean, there's no other way around it. I mean, like he groomed and sexually abused me. Like I hate him. I truly do. But the other truth is that like he did it in a way that he was still being one of the more like impactful teachers in my life, you know, which maybe just says more about all my other teachers than it says about him. I don't
I
know.
mean,
But
again,
like,
we love teachers.
oh God. Yeah. It's so fucked up. And I don't in any way want to give him any credit for any part of my success as an adult. I feel like I have
Yeah, no,
succeeded
that's
in
all
spite
you.
of
That's you,
him.
baby girl.
But yeah, it's really it's a strange thing to try to wrap your mind around. So in all those years leading up to it, I was getting more and more and more involved in programs that he was in charge of. So he was in charge of, yeah, newspaper yearbook, which meant I was staying after school. I was doing study halls in his classroom. So again, it was just like, oh, you're so good at this. You're so good at this. You should join this. You should join this. So that I'm in his classroom more. I'm
Mhm.
in his classroom after hours. And let me tell you what, I have gone back and I have read what I was writing in high school. Baby girl, it was not good. I couldn't spell. I had no understanding of grammar. It was bad. Like, it's whatever.
It
You know what I
can't
mean?
have been that bad. Yeah, whatever.
It's not that good either. So, you know what I mean? Like, I do think a lot of that was not that he truly believed in me. He was just trying to get access to me. And it became clear years later that he was doing it to a shitload of girls at the same time. So, I mean, I think he was just trying to groom as many of us as he could at once. And then if he got you on the hook, he got you on the hook. Like, it was not me and me alone. There were
Mhm.
other girls in our school that I have talked to that, he made comments to or he made them uncomfortable. Yeah, so I
Did
think
he
that all of
teach
that was part of it.
anywhere? Sorry, did he teach anywhere before coming to your high school?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I was just curious because I just wonder, could you have been the first one that actually
I
stuck, like, with
it's
that net that he cast? Like, were you the
Yeah,
first one he actually
I
caught?
still think there had to have been at least one or two before me. I could be wrong, but I also feel like, we talked to a lot of grooming and abuse experts through our process that were adamant there's no way I was the first. Just based off of his behavior, the things that he did, the way that he did it, like dude knew what he was doing. And if it's not true and I was the first, then wow, that really came to him naturally. I don't know. I really doubt it. I put out a very wide net when I came forward about what happened to me in hopes of finding other students if something had happened. And nobody came forward, which, as you and I both know, doesn't necessarily mean that they don't exist. I have no proof that he abused anyone else before me, but I also would not be shocked at all to find out that there were others. So
When did it start to shift, to you getting a feeling that something about it wasn't right or that you knew you didn't want it anymore? When did that happen?
I mean, knowing something wasn't right the whole damn time, right? Because you can't tell anybody. Like, this is if there's anyone who is listening who is at any stage in their life, if you have to lie to people about any part of your romantic relationship, run. You should not be in that relationship. Like, a lesson I wish I had learned much younger in my life, because I replayed that pattern quite a few times, unfortunately, after this, of like, oh, they just don't understand. We're star-crossed lovers. It's the world against us, which shit we can talk about in our groom scrolling segments. But all that messaging is really toxic and it really gets embedded in your mind as a young kid that that's romance, right? Where you have to leave your entire life behind. And sure, that can be true in certain circumstances, but most of the time it means that somebody's fucking doing something shitty to the other person and the people around you will point it out and you don't want to hear it. So I feel like the whole time I knew something about it was scandalous or wrong on some level because I didn't tell anybody but my one best friend. Um, and then even after I graduated high school, I remember being like, "Oh, okay, well now I've graduated, we don't have to hide it anymore." And I remember him still being like, "Nah, like we need to be careful and I could still get in trouble and blah blah blah." And I remember that kind of being like, "Well, are you ashamed of me? You embarrassed to be seen with me because I'm so much younger than you," which again is like classic grooming. Like you're putting it all on yourself of I'm the problem. I'm the one that's like embarrassing, not like I should be embarrassed to be seen with this dude who's 12 years older than me, right? Like, and then I think it was once I went to college though, because we were still together my freshman year of college. And I remember going to college and meeting totally new people and like, decorating my dorm room and putting up pictures of me and him together on our vacation that we took that summer. And yeah, dude, he looks like my old uncle or something in these photos. And I remember my roommate being like, who's that guy? And I was like, that's my boyfriend. God, I wish I could find my old roommate, by the way. I feel like I tried to at one time because I just want to be like, I just want to hear you tell me
Yeah.
about what kind of crazy Kool-Aid I was drinking that year. And then I remember telling her finally, oh, well, he was my high school English teacher. And just the look on her face of like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Do you remember where she was from?
She was from, she lived up in the Twin Cities, like where I went to college. So, um,
Okay. I was
grew up
just
in a
wondering,
bigger
like,
city.
maybe, yeah, bigger city, like different kind of culture. We've heard a lot of how kind of just accepted this teacher student boundary crossing kind of relationship is accepted sometimes in more rural communities.
Yeah, and I mean, it for sure was in mine. Like, it was not unusual. There were many other teacher-student relationships that all of us kids knew about, which, on some extent is then like the whole town and the whole culture and the school is like grooming the whole town, right? Like, it's normalizing the behavior for everybody. So that even if other students had found out about what was happening to me, most of them wouldn't have thought it was a problem because it
Right.
had happened so many times right in front of us. Yeah, so I think going to college, which he also tried to stop me from doing, by the way. He tried to talk me out of going to college right after high school and tried to get me to wait for him so that he could get a job up in the Twin Cities and move there and have me live with him, which is fucking terrifying to think about. Like, I mean, he could have completely kept me in seclusion for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? If he had succeeded in that and if I had never had an aha moment, I could still be under that dude's thumb, which is really scary to think
Yeah.
about. But yeah, I remember him wanting me to wait to go to college. And thank God that I was like, "Oh, fuck you." Like, you know what I mean? Like, on the inside, I was like, "Well, fuck this guy. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going away, dude. Like, I'm going to art school. Okay, bye." Like, I didn't care. So, yeah, I just remember the more and more people I told at college, everyone had an appropriate reaction, which was like, "That's fucking weird, dude. That's creepy. He looks old. Like, yuck. Why are you dating that old man?" And then he came up to visit one time and like, stayed in my dorm with me, which is like so creepy because I lived with like three other girls who were, 17, 18 years old. Like, ugh, it's so skeezy to think about now. Sleeping in my twin bed in my dorm room with me. It's just so gross. And I just remember feeling really embarrassed of him like in that context because before then it had just been him and I in this insulated world where
Mhm.
we were just in his apartment or we were in his car or we were like traveling out of state where nobody knew us, right? It was a, a very protected world that he kept us inside of, which makes sense. And then
Yes.
having him be around people that I knew and letting them see us together in that way was like really embarrassing. And I remember sitting down one night in college and doing the math of how old he would be when I turned certain ages. And I was like, ew. When I'm 25, he'll be like 37, like yuck. And I just like did the math and I was like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life taking care of this old dude. I also got snowed in at his apartment over Christmas break and I wanted to rip his face
Yeah,
off. He
that's, you
drove me
saw a different side of
oh
him.
god, he drove me absolutely insane. We were literally trapped together for like 4 days and I was like,
Oh god.
I could go the rest of my life without ever seeing this human being ever again. Like I hate you so much. He was so agitating. Yeah, so and then I broke up with him over the phone because I was 18 and or maybe 19
And
by
he
that
didn't
point.
deserve anything more.
No, and he cried and yada yada. So I went to his apartment, I think a month after that when I was back home for break or something and picked up my box of stuff from his apartment. So very dramatic and he made a big scene about it and that I think is the last time I ever saw him, which is
In
crazy. So,
person.
in person, yes, in person, the last time I ever saw him, yeah, it was 20 years ago.
So I guess my final question for you, Sarah, is what, besides listening to your gut and your instincts,
Mhm.
what would you say to 15-year-old Sarah?
Oh, good lord. Um, you don't have to love every guy that shows you any little bit of attention. I look back in retrospect and I feel like it's such a classic reality for so many teenagers, is that you're just so desperate for connection and love and attention, that you don't really stop to think about whether or not you like the person that you're giving your time and attention to. Because I didn't like him. I really did not like him fundamentally as a person. Obviously by the time everything happened, I did like him. I had come around, but that was after like a very long period of time of him wearing down my defenses. So yeah, I don't know. I wish I would have been a little less boy crazy. I wish I wouldn't have felt the need to be in love so much. Like I was just so like in love with being in love, and I was always just obsessing over like somebody or another. And I look back and wish I hadn't wasted so much energy on silly boys or silly creepy old men in his case. But I also don't blame myself, like
Yeah.
I don't blame myself for what anything that happened with him. um I think I'd mostly just, trust your gut. And yeah, if you have to lie about it, you shouldn't be doing it. And that applies to everything in life, not just
Period.
relationships, period. Like, unless you are resisting Nazis or racists or sexists and you have to lie so that you don't get hurt, then you can lie in those situations. That's different.
Yeah.
Viva la
Yes.
resistance, God damn it.
Well, thank you for sharing so much about
Yes.
that history.
Well, thank you for asking, Diana. It's weird to talk about, but I think it's important to talk about. And as you and I both know, like it unlocks some weird memories, good and bad sometimes. But yeah, I think it's just good to remember, we were kids, we were young, we were just goofballs.
Mhm.
I had braces and was driving a, crappy old Oldsmobile, blasting Weezer and drinking wine coolers. It's just a kid.
Seagrams.
Oh
Yeah.
god, just doing stupid kid stuff. And that's the thing that, that's the one thing I would say that bums me out the most is I just think about like, what I could have been doing in that time period instead of wasting my time with him, or like what I would have been up to my freshman year of college if I hadn't been getting abused by, my teacher, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
we'll never know.
Pretty shitty that he was in your life like throughout all of high school.
Mhm.
That sucks.
Yes. So thank you for asking me all these questions, Diana. I think it's important to talk about. And I look forward to talking to you about who you were at the time when you met the teacher and who Diana was in high school and what was happening in the world, what you were doing with your hair and makeup at the time. I'm sure it was fabulous. Uh,
Oh,
oh, yeah, hair and
I can't
makeup.
wait to tell you.
Yeah, so that we can kind of figure out, who we were before, our unfortunate crossings with this teacher so that we can have a better understanding of where we both came from, which will, help people understand who we are today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and thank you, listeners, for joining us in this first episode. And yeah, we will get into a little bit more about me next time. We do have an email. It is bloomingaftergrooming@gmail.com if you want to reach out. Otherwise, we will just see you next time. Bye.
We also have an Instagram account you should check out.
Oh, yes. Yes, we do have an Instagram account. It is Blooming After Pod. Go check it out.
There's gonna be content and stuff at some point, and like follow us, like, rate, and review whatever the podcasters say.
Yeah. I think nowadays it's follow. Yeah, you said follow us.
Follow.
Follow us.
I'm an elder millennial. Okay, so get on your old internet box on the www's and hit the old like button.
Okay. Let's like what she said. All right, bye.
Bye. You know what, Diana? Let's make a podcast. How about that?
We're doing it though. It's happening right now.
Right now.
Ooh, that whisper sounded really nice.
ASMR.